All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Good evening, where you are, whatever time of day or evening you happen to be looking in. I'm Eddie Huff. This is my dear friend and sometimes enemy. Do you call that frenemies?
Yeah.
My frenemy. No, we've grown to be really good friends.
You know what, Eddie?
Who love to disagree with one another.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, I learn a lot more from discussions with people I disagree with than people I do agree with.
That's true. That's why the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron.
Yes.
This is David Van Risingham, by the way. I'm Eddie Huff, and you're listening to Fresh Black Coffee. Hey, everybody. No, seriously, it's very good to be with you once again after another eventful week. It's always eventful as long as we have Brandon as president of the United States of America, and we hopefully only have him for another year and a half or so.
Did you hear what happened on his way out of England?
No, what happened?
Well, first of all, he shows up late at the Queen's funeral, and so they make him sit in the back, right? Him and his wife. And as he's driving out of London, the crowds are cheering, "Let's go, Brandon." And the more vulgar term.
Are you serious?
Not kidding you, yes.
And now, are these the British crowd?
British were doing it to him.
Are yelling, "Let's go, Brandon."
That's right.
Oh, man, I missed that. Of course, most of the media won't do that. You'll only find that on your underground news, which is funny because the new underground news is Newsmax, OAN, and things like that. Even Fox News doesn't report stuff like that. It's really sad that Fox News has really turned into just another mass media, MSN.
Yeah.
It's the major news outlets are just all turned so, I don't know what's going on. It really is funny because growing up as a child of the 60s, I was born in the 50s, but mainly where I started paying attention was in the 60s. And the big thing was the leftist movement, the liberals and the youth movement, the radical movement and everything, the anti-establishment movement grew, and the left was all young. It was young males and females, and in fact, I wrote a thing on this, a new establishment. I wrote this whole article on the new establishment. And
was that the one where I asked you if they were Karens, and you said no, they're more Kamishas and was that the same one?
That's a new name. That's a new one, but that's a good one. I haven't heard that one. Somebody will probably come up with that name at some point when they run out of all the others.
This was last fall. You talked about the new establishment, and I said, "You mean the Karens?" And you said, "No, the Kamishas and something else."
Yeah, pretty much, because basically in those days the establishment was white, it was male, it was all over 40 or even over 50.
Wore a suit and tie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And now the establishment is young, it's multicultural, it's heavily female, it's everything's reversed.
Oh, yeah.
And the radicals tend to be white, older, what Biden calls the extremists. Yeah. The American extremists,
right.
The Trumpers. Right. Yeah, that's the radicals.
And masculinity is a toxin now.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at it, everything is flipped on its head.
Yeah.
In fact, something I feel really bad about it. In fact, I wrote it in my book, Y'all Have Sinned. I became radicalized my freshman year at Texas Tech University. And I remember, I think we talked about this too, the Wesleyan Foundation. It's a Methodist organization. And it was a good organization. It was a student organization. And they built these clubs, I guess you would call them.
Student centers.
Student centers it used to be on campus. I think they've moved most of them just off campus. Yeah. Because of separation of church and state. But anyway, and there was one just right off campus at Texas Tech.
Sure.
And so they started having these meetings, and all of a sudden it was this radicalized meeting place. And so they invited me, and I was this stupid young, I didn't even know what I was talking about. I sounded just like Barack Obama, though. I was young, dumb, and 18.
See, if you're smooth, though, it still
It was weird. Seriously, when I hear him speaking, I started laughing because it was the same stuff I was saying when I was 18 years old. And I would have these speakers in front of the student union and have these crowds and everybody, and I just making it up, just as Obama was. I didn't have these people behind me like he did, but anyway, I remember, and so the elders of the church and deacons one day decided they had better have a meeting with us because we were spewing pretty radical stuff, anti-government. In no way was a Christian. I mean, I was so as far away from God as you could get. Yet we were using the Wesleyan, the Methodist churches, building, their facilities, their money, all of this. So, so we're in here with this meeting, and this pastor, I'm sorry, one of the deacons says, "Well, what if we decide to stop you? What if we, come against you?" I said, "We'll just outlast you. We'll wait for you to die."
Oh, boomer.
I know. And I thought back on that I just told a guy, I literally prophesied in an ungodly prophecy saying, "You can't stop us. All we have to do is outlast you."
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Muslims have said, we will wait. They will wait hundreds of years to outlast us.
Yeah.
And sadly, it almost seems true. But this was me speaking as a young radical, a liberal, that all we have to do is wait for these old fogey white conservatives to die off, and we will take over.
Yeah.
And sadly, I am now one of the old fogies. I'm not a white one, but still, I now regret that what I spoke in 1969 is coming true.
Wow.
It was almost like I was seeing things just being brash and everything. And that's what's happened, that it has flipped on its head. The new establishment is white, non-white, it's multicultural, it's female, it's even homosexual, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
And everything.
Stridently
It's
so.
everything anti what it was in 1969.
Yeah. A few thoughts that I could go several directions, but what you say about outlasting, see, that's got a lot more gravitas than you may realize, because that was Ho Chi Minh's policy in dealing with the Americans in Vietnam War, because the U.S. never lost a battle.
Right.
But lost the war because they just wore us out.
Attrition.
Now, that wasn't even new with them. George Washington used it to defeat the British. He would never hold to a battle that he couldn't win.
Right.
So he'd always duck and run, and it was guerrilla warfare. And in fact, that's the policy of Afghanistan. And they survived almost 10 years of the Soviets, and then almost 20 years of the Americans. And we gave him a gift of what? $80 billion worth of the best weapons.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brandon.
But and honestly, that's the policy of the Democrats or the progressives.
Yes.
Socialists, the American socialists, the I call them the Desis. We don't have Nazis, we have Desis. Democrats, socialists. For those of you that don't know, most of you that watch our podcast know what Nazi actually stands for. It's not National Capitalist Party. It's the National Socialist.
That's right.
That's what Nazi stands for. It's so funny to me that the Democrats are able to perpetuate this lie that Republicans or capitalists are the Nazis, that the right wing are the Nazis. The Nazis were never right wing. This is what you guys have to get in your head. Anytime they bring this up, you have to throw this back in their face. The Nazis were never Nazis, and communists were basically the same animal fighting. It was a turf war.
Yeah,
It's a
it was
turf war.
Hitler's clique versus a rival socialist clique.
Exactly.
Because he had to fight the communists first to get power.
To get power over the people. And they both come out of the same ideology of Karl Marx.
Mm-hmm.
They're both. Lenin brought forth Marxist ideology in the form of communism. Hitler brought it forth in the form of Nazism.
Yeah.
Back in those days, the way Hitler did it, and my mother was a benefactor of this. Families, fatherless families. The widow would get social benefits. The children, he would give birthday presents to poor families where the kids didn't have a father. The government somehow knew everybody had to be registered. You still register in Germany, actually. Yeah. And so the kids would get a little birthday present. They would get Christmas presents, at special holidays.
So your mother got birthday presents from Adolf Hitler?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Adolf. My mom actually for years and years thought Hitler was God's gift to mankind,
Sure.
And yet she also saw the things that Hitler did because her mother, a devout Catholic, knew Hitler was evil.
Yeah.
And she was actually giving out papers, newspapers, or selling them for the rival faction fighting Hitler. And my mother remembers seeing the Gestapo come, take my grandmother's papers and burn them on the street right in front of her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things like this. But this is what's happening in America. And so as we're moving towards socialism, which again, and it's nationals, we're actually moving towards a national socialism. That's actually because we're nationalizing everything.
Right, but we're actually a sect of it called fascism, which is you still have the corporations, but the government picks the winners and losers.
Well, but see, that's what Hitler did.
Right.
The corrupt, Messerschmitt, all of the things that can benefit the pharmaceuticals, the weapon factories, anything that was necessary for power.
All those German
power.
automakers like Porsche, they were part of the war effort.
Exactly.
The Nazis.
So I mean, I don't know. Fascism is actually more a thing of the way you exercise the power, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, but specifically.
Here we go. This is us. This is now we're arguing.
As an economic public policy, where Germany where communism takes over industry, like let's take Soviet Union, take North Korea example, whereas in let's take Italy, Mussolini.
Let me wrap this up real quick and make it easier. See if you agree with this. One word: oligarchs.
Okay. Yeah,
that's basically what we're talking about.
Right.
The fascism.
Who are the oligarchs today? Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly.
Okay. He's somebody who communicates with the White House daily. They give him his marching orders, and they leave him alone, and they give him special protections that the rest of us don't have.
The pharmaceutical industry, the banks, whoever, whatever. Right.
But they have to order their corporate policy to match the regime.
Right. And Russia has become an oligarchical.
Yeah, they have.
Right.
They used to try to be a more pure communist,
and they realized they couldn't keep that up.
Right.
So it's funny they've morphed. And actually, one of the funny things that I find. This is kind of a sociology class today. Hi, kids. No, but what's so funny is that what we're finding is that Russia has become more capitalist in many ways than America. And America has become more fascist or communist or socialist than Russia.
Yeah.
And Putin's having a hard time keeping it together, control of his people because they're starting to get free. And our people are asking for more control. I mean, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird how the Russians are starting to rebel through the Ukrainian situation and all that? They're really starting to rise up, and you hear every day that Putin is having harder and harder time controlling. And here in America, we've got the Democrats beginning to exercise more and more control through the FBI, the KGB, or the what is it? The not is it the RGB? What do they call the new? There's a new secret police that.
In Russia.
In Russia,
Yeah,
I can't remember. Okay. In East Germany, it was the Stasi.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever the.
And in America, it's the FBI.
In America, exactly, it's the FBI that we've become that way. They're controlled totally, and they operate at the behest of the government.
Yes.
And the reason they do it is because they have that political power. For example, Odessa, Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Okay, Odessa used to be the Riviera of the communist mucky mucks. Mm-hmm. That's where all of the rich communist people in power, everybody was supposed to share everything equally. You're supposed to all live at the same. You share everything in common. You had no wealthy class, no poverty class. Everybody was equal. But for some reason, the government bureaucrats, the people that had all the power, they were in Odessa.
Exactly.
And our version of Odessa is called
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yes,
exactly.
I knew where you're
Martha's
going.
Vineyard. You knew exactly. Yeah. And where we did what? We just kicked a bunch of.
Can't have riffraff in that town.
We just put them. We gave them hugs, gave them teddy bears, kissed them on their cheeks, and sent them on their way to a military base.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is so unbelievable what is going on right now in the United States of America, the USSA, United Soviet Socialist, United Soviet States of America.
Yeah,
that it is scary, people. If it weren't, it would be funny if it weren't so scary.
Okay, I want to explain something here because this is a perfect segue. People say, why was it such a priority to get 87,000 new IRS agents? For the same reason that so many of our other industries have already been corrupted, because the regime threatens to take you down economically.
Yeah.
If you don't. And
you play ball, we leave you alone.
Or we'll take you down. We will make you a pauper if you do not play ball with us.
Right.
And that's how they're doing it.
Yeah. That's exactly. And we will keep you from getting power. I didn't learn how communism actually operated until we joined Youth with Mission, and then I was in Holland, but I met some Germans that had escaped East Germany, because this was prior to 87 when the wall came down. And I met this guy, and he had actually been tortured and everything, and I asked him about how things went with Christianity in the church, and he told me, now, this really blew my mind. He said, you could be a Christian in Russia and East Germany. They did not actually forbid you to practice your faith. What they did forbid was actual official organized churches.
Yes.
And here's the deal. The only people that could go to college, the only people that could get a upper level job were members of the party.
Right.
But you could not be a member of the Communist Party if you were a Christian. If you believed in God, or espoused that you believed in God, or claimed that admitted you were a Christian, you could not be a member of the Communist Party. And if you were not a member of the Communist Party, you could not go to university. You could not get an upper level or mid-level job. You could only work in a factory,
but Eddie,
or
that
as a cleaning
like
person.
A social credit score.
Isn't
that it?
Yeah. So imagine in America, it'd be the same thing.
Yes.
If you're applying for a scholarship and they ask you,
have you been vaccinated?
There's
another one.
But eventually, we will get to the same place that your faith, if you're a Christian, or let's put it this way, one of those born-again Christians, one of those serious Christians, you will be blackballed from certain universities, certain organizations,
Eddie?
certain jobs.
Okay, and I'm just using vaccine because that's been their latest push.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a test run of this. You get kicked out of the military and no benefits if you aren't fully vaccinated, according to whatever their multi-changing terms are. How many boosters? Okay, it was 3, now it's 4, now it's 5. In many states, you lose your job as a teacher, right? Many hospitals, you lose your job. Some of those right here in Oklahoma.
And you know why? Why are people not getting the booster or the vaccine?
Well, I think it's...
What are they claiming?
Well, it's dangerous.
No, well, yeah, but what is the exception that people are using?
Or religious.
Exactly. It's I think that's the first step.
Yeah.
That way they're identifying who the religious fanatics are.
Yeah.
I think we're headed there. I think we're headed there. And here's another way you identify the religious fanatics. What is your position on sex?
Yeah.
In other words, do you accept transsexual as a classification? In other words, do you believe that there is no such thing as male or female? You have to accept the fact that there is non-binary, all this gobbledygook. That because there's a case. There's several cases right now, but even there's a story. I don't know if I printed this one, but I know I just read about it, about the Air Force Academy, that they've got a big case going right now where the Air Force Academy is wanting to get rid of these people because they won't accept the fact of the Air Force Academy is trying to get cadets and the staff there to get rid of the terms male, female, him and her and things. This is the Air Force Academy where you're supposed to be studying military tactics and how to fly.
How to kill people and break things.
But I mean, it's unbelievable what is happening, what has infiltrated our national security and our national defense and our nation, period, the things that make our nation run. It's been totally overrun by social doctrine.
This goes to where people often miscategorize, and I'm speaking in an academic sense about what fascism is. They usually go to intolerance. Now, both were true of Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany. The intolerance, but that just has to do with being a tyrant, and ordering society, and that's no different than is in North Korea, right? It's intolerance, but I just have to say, when people talk in economic terms about fascism, that's where I was getting at. It's the twin sister, the stepsister of communism.
Well, right. Actually, the term fascist, it's fist. That's what it means.
Or a bundle of twigs.
A bundle of twigs that's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's bound together.
Right. So it
has to do with uniformity, consistency.
Yeah. In the forcing of uniformity and the power in that, and it's just got to be we have to resist it at every turn, and we don't see it, and this brings we can move from that to this. I mean, it's all related, but what really has been disturbing to me very much is the lack of will in the church to respond. The greatest power in this nation till now, or the greatest group to be able to stand up against this, as it was during the revolution. Every time we've faced a crisis, it has always been the church that has been able to rise and mobilize the people spiritually and physically to stand against the oppression coming, or whatever forces were attacking this nation and the nations, period.
Yeah.
But whenever the church lays down, it happened in Germany. The Lutheran Church basically abdicated its role. The Catholic Church, certain segments went into cooperation with Hitler, particularly against the Jews, and then the rest is history.
Yeah.
Okay. So in America, the church, we have too many pastors and church members that are unwilling to stand up or unwilling to look and see what is actually going on at the highest levels. They are more concerned about the guy with bad hair and bad manners than they are with the guy with bad policy who is destroying our nation.
And I want to say, amongst evangelical Christians and Christian leaders, you probably find, if you ask any evangelical leader who studied the theologians and religious leaders of the last century, two of the top people they probably put in there were not known for their great writings, great thinkings, but their great example. I'm thinking Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Watchman Nee, because they stood against Nazism and communism. You know, and sometimes it's that power of our example that speaks louder than the great philosophical, writings.
Look at Daniel.
Yes.
Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego.
Yes.
They were loyal to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
A pagan king, right? Yet they won over that pagan king by obeying him, being loyal to that king, yet standing up for the morals of God.
That's right.
Yet we've got people who would rather it's almost the opposite. They're more worried about the immoral king, and yet what is he doing to our country? If that makes sense. And I'm just gonna say it. Okay, Donald Trump is not the guy I would want to invite over to my house. Okay, I don't need to have Donald over for my Thanksgiving dinner and around my kid. I don't know. He might actually be a fun and a nice guy with my. I know when he's with children, he seems to be a nice guy, but on the golf course, he's not the kind of guy I want to hang out with.
I've heard about those golf outings.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll give you that. Okay. He likes to cuss.
Yes, he does.
One, he doesn't drink. I mean, that's a good thing. He doesn't drink. You can't say that again.
So you can't blame his cussing on drinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but then, but the things he has done, his public stand against abortion, his public stand for protecting minors, for protecting minors, stand against drugs, his protecting our nation against an influx of illegal minors and against other nations taking advantage of us. Okay. Now you've got Joe Biden, who I guarantee you in fact, he's been caught on open mics cussing. You remember with Obama?
In the White House, to Obama's ear.
And you hear him cussing back
F-bombs.
there. And yet people, you won't hear, you don't ever hear anything about that. And nobody ever talks about that. And he's supposed to be seen, the guy right now can't string two sentences together. And so, but the public policies are horrible. He believes in abortion, whatever you want, whenever you want it, how late you want it. He is just basically given carte blanche to the anti-life movement. I'm going to call him, we have pro-life, I'm going to call him anti-life, okay? He is given carte blanche. Do whatever you want. Kill him. I guarantee you if tomorrow the NARAL or whoever they were want to do euthanasia, when a baby's born and if it's deformed, whatever, just let it die, like the governor of Virginia said. We'll make it comfortable. We'll play pretty music and just let it die. Let it go on. That type of thing. This is who you've got.
Yeah.
We know the type of moral character he has. None. Okay. But yet you're going to sit there and worry about it because Donald Trump talks badly to his adversaries. At least we know what he's like. We know he speaks. That's who he is.
Right.
An honest man. Okay. Yeah. No guile.
Yeah.
He is a man without guile. I'd rather deal. I'll take it back when I was in college. Okay. I came to this. I began to appreciate Southern bigots more than Northern bigots.
Yes.
In the South, at least I knew if a guy called me a nigger, I knew who I was dealing with.
Yeah.
In the North, they wouldn't call it to my face, but They would never give me a promotion in my job.
Exactly.
They would never. I don't know if did I ever tell you this story. You know, I like to tell stories. I was in my first job after college, and so I get transferred to Dallas. And I'm sitting in this meeting with this insurance company, and it was early in the morning, 7:00 meeting, and I live way up in Louisville, so it's traffic wasn't as bad, but it still took 45 minutes to get downtown to middle of Dallas. So I'm kind of half asleep, in fact, yeah. And so I'm there like this, and so they're talking about workers' comp problems, how many claims they're having over in Fort Worth, and so the guy is our claims manager was named Art, and so. Art is talking about we've got too many workers' comp claims in Fort Worth. And the guy, the supervisor over workers' comp claim, he says, well, hell, Art, we ain't got nothing over there, a bunch of niggers and Mexicans. and the room, everybody, I'm the only black person working in this whole department, right? No Mexicans. And there was like a gasp that went, you know, because I'm sitting there and I know Art was just dying, you know.
Yeah.
And me, of course, I pretended I was still asleep, like I didn't even hear it. You know? But here, what's so amazing about that, the guy that was talking about the niggers and Mexicans, okay, he's the one guy in that whole room that I trusted more than any of the rest of the guys in there, because he is the guy that would defend me to the nth degree.
There you go.
And in fact, there was a case that came up where I had to go look at a house, and the person called his agent and didn't like my claim settlement, and it was that same guy who went into they sent another adjuster out there to go reevaluate the house.
Yeah,
and that's the guy. He wasn't even in that department. He's the one that got him. Went into the in the manager's office, and they had a closed door, and I saw him in there just yelling about it, defending me, saying you should never have done that because you know Eddie's a good adjuster, and he did it right. And he came by mine, and he's just yelling. He said, "I know you did it right," you know. And but he's cussing, of course, all the time, you know, about this.
Yeah.
But that what I'm saying is, I knew even going to Texas, and there were a bunch of other kids went to Alabama, Ole Miss, and we were all from Europe, and every one of them, the black kids, knew that going to school in the South, even because of the history of the South, was preferable to going to one of the northern universities because the racism in the South was open.
Yeah.
You knew that if you were accepted in the South, you proved yourself, you were truly accepted.
Yep.
In the North, you could never prove yourself because you would never be equal to them.
Right.
Thus, you have Martha's Vineyard.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know, did we talk about this last week? I don't know if you looked in Martha's Vineyard and you see the films of the migrants that were there and they're putting them on buses and doing all this and talking to all people. There was not one black person in that anywhere in the picture.
Wow.
It's because there are no black people in that. See, this is a secret that not many people know. Martha's Vineyard is divided. You have a black part of Martha's Vineyard and a white part of Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
The Obamas are basically the only black people that live in the white part of Martha's Vineyard. I found this out several years ago because the black people, in fact, I may have talked about this before. The black people were upset because the Obamas didn't live on their part of the island.
Yep.
They decided they wanted to be white.
Yeah.
And so this is more of the hypocrisy of the Obamas. But this is a lot of what's going on in our country that people don't look at. And I don't know how we got here.
Yeah, I do want to say something about, the open bigotry and then the very couched, very, secret bigotry. One of my previous employers, just a few months before I left, I was working on Phil Graham's presidential campaign in '95. And the owner, the company, multimillionaire, he's talking to me in the warehouse, and he's got employees there, including a Philippine lady who actually has a doctorate in the Philippines, but it's no good over here. And he said, well, Dave, I really can't support Phil Graham. I said, oh, what is it about his policies? He says, no, it's his wife. And I said, oh, what's wrong with his wife? Because I know she's got a doctorate in economics as well. They're both economists. He says, well, she doesn't look American. And I said, and I turned to him. I said, sir, what does an American look like? Well, he didn't have an answer for that. And he said, keep it down. I don't want Song to hear us. Because he didn't want to offend her. She's a good employee.
Yeah.
Good worker. Didn't want her walking out. Didn't want her knowing how much of a bigot he was. You know, 3-4 months before my dad died, it was the fall of '08. And he and my mom were come down visiting. It was like right after election, or right before. And my mom says, David, did you hear Dad's finally going to vote for a Republican for president? All his life, he'd been a Christian at that point for 30 years, committed, dedicated Christian, but always voted Democrat. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then I asked my mom later, I said, what happened? And she says, oh, it has nothing to do with his politics. He doesn't want to vote for a black man. My dad still carried that bigotry.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
He never dealt with a black man all his life, except for the short time he was in Korea. You know, we lived in a small town that there was never more than 2 black families in the whole town.
And that's Wisconsin.
This is Minnesota, central Minnesota, small town. Yeah. You know, so he didn't have any reason to have prejudice. He just, you know, he grew up in the 20s and 30s when racial divides were more than just black and white or Oriental. It was the Irish didn't like the British and the British didn't like the Irish.
Oh, yeah.
Or the French. God, disgusting. Or Italians.
Poles?
Yes.
The Polish?
Polish jokes were the
Germans?
thing where I grew up.
Germans?
Then I found out I was part Polish.
Well, you know, I told you about the Dutch and the Belgians.
Yeah.
I remember I went into a place, you know, in Holland, and you could buy these things, and it had a Belgian coffee cup. And Belgian coffee cup, then I looked at it, and the handle was inside the cup.
Yeah.
It was like Polish jokes, you know.
Right.
But I'd never seen it. It was a coffee cup, but the you know, the little handle that you normally, but it was inside the cup.
See, now here in America,
it's like an Aggie joke or a Polish joke.
Well, that's just it. Like here in America, growing up, we'd always tell jokes putting down Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
And here in Oklahoma, we put down Arkansas.
Right.
Right? That's just the way we are.
Yeah.
But so people have this nativist thing. It's just, you're not one of ours. You know, and you get that in New England a lot.
Well, you know, in my book, I talk about that whole thing about how race is such an overrated thing, and about how in Europe, for example, before 1450, let's say 1448 is when the first black Africans ever first came to Europe, and it was Portugal. But before then, nobody ever knew there was such a thing as a black person. They never knew there was an African.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was the Vikings raiding, and you know, the Germans, the Goths, the Visigoths, and the Huns, and da-da-da. And so it's so funny how, it was a nation. In fact, you know, in the Bible, I taught nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And we've always made our enemies of those that didn't. It used to not be those who don't look like us. It'd be those that don't speak like us, those that don't have our culture, those that don't dress like us.
Yeah.
And as I talk about here also, it's not about race. In fact, again, I talk about, I don't believe there's such a thing as racism. I think everything boils down to a class thing ultimately. Yeah. And if you get rid of race, it always ends up being class.
Yep.
You always have the Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
People, like, for example, you know, we talked about the 2 parts of Martha's Vineyard, okay? So you can have the black part and the white part, but the black part won't let people from Harlem onto their island, part of the island, any more than the white people will let people from Brooklyn onto their part of the island, right? It's just a thing. We don't want you all here because you can come look, buy in our stores, but then get on the boat and go back, right? Yeah. You're not welcome here. And it's so funny. The biggest lie or thing that has been perpetrated is the fact that the South is full of all these bigots. One thing that really shocked me, I went to join Youth with a Mission in 1981, and we used to have intercessory prayer every morning, and we had this book that we would read through, and then we would have to we could pick subjects in the world. And I remember reading the Stars and Stripes, and I did not know. Here's what's really ironic and really funny. In 1961, President Kennedy caused the schools in Alabama and Mississippi to be integrated. Remember that? He sent the troops in to integrate, and George Wallace standing on the steps in Alabama, and then he stepped aside, and they came. So the schools in the South were integrated. Did you know that the schools in Boston, Massachusetts, where Kennedy is from, did not get integrated until 1982?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, busing was a much bigger struggle in Boston because that was the thing. And it wasn't enough to integrate them because they still lived in their parts of town, and the districts were mapped out that way.
They had riots.
Yeah.
It was the white people rioting because they did not want their schools integrated. But that's so funny. 20 years after Kennedy was fighting to desegregate the schools in the South, and right in his backyard, they were still segregated. And nobody even ever mentioned it.
Right, and even in D.C., 10 years after Kennedy, you get the scenario that we've all watched in the movie Remember the Titans. That was D.C. area.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was 10 years later. But that was Virginia, actually, still Virginia and Maryland.
It was, but it was just right across the Potomac. It was the Metro Beltway.
Yeah, that's true.
It was Alexandria.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how everyone wants to always point to the South, to the South. Even, to be fair, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't apply to Delaware and certain other states initially.
Well, Kentucky and Maryland particularly. They stayed with the North, yet they kept their slaves. And so Lincoln carved out that they could keep their slaves.
Right.
And then, of course, it didn't apply here in Oklahoma because that was Indian territory.
Yeah, I think we were the last ones, actually.
We were about 2 years later.
Go Oklahoma. Boomers. That's something to be proud of, isn't it? Boomers.
Hey, it wasn't
the last ones to give up our slaves.
European folk that were doing the slave holding.
No, but you know who it was who held all the slaves?
Well, it was the Indians.
It was the tribes.
That's right.
Those poor.
Oppressed.
Poor oppressed natives. Yeah, Native Americans on that Trail of Tears. That's what's so funny. When I was with Pat and we had one of those, what do they call them? The freedmen. The lady representing freedmen at Cherokee was trying to kick them off the rolls. And that touch said, well, what about the Trail of Tears? And the lady said, who do you think was carrying their luggage?
Oh, yes, best line. That's priceless.
I just died right there. Who was carrying their luggage on the Trail of Tears?
That's the best line.
It was their slaves. And I said, oh, man, that changed my whole, and I've got to give it to the Chickasaw because the Chickasaw followed, they gave them their 40 acres and a mule. Yeah. That's how T.W. Shannon, his parents ended up with their land. And
he got both sides because he told me, we were at the Capitol, he says, I actually have Cherokee blood in me and freedman blood.
Right. Yeah. Double dipping.
There you go.
Double dipping. That old TW. Go TW. Oh man, we better get on. Hey, thank you once again for tuning in to this crazy, crazy show we have. I bet you hear stuff here you don't hear anywhere else, do you?
I call that our Joe Rogan segment, where we just kind of go on.
Yeah, we just said, yeah. So at
least we're not 3 hours.
May we end up with a tithe of Joe Rogan's audience.
There we go.
We get a tithe of Joe Rogan's audience. I'll be happy. Hey, I want to talk about the new tactic of the January 6th committee. Mm-hmm. They just started up again.
I heard they're going to have another one of their big primetime shows.
Yeah, but what they're doing, the new tactic, they're not calling in their witnesses anymore, actually, like they were before. Basically what they're doing now is they're issuing all these subpoenas to all of these people that were involved in any way or suspected of being involved in any way on the telephone, through emails, through any kind of communication with President Trump or anyone in relation to questioning the election.
Yeah.
So you may not have been anywhere near the Capitol on January 6th, but if you anyway questioned the outcome prior to, during, or after January 6th, you're subject to getting a visit from the FBI.
See, now this, when people talk about the intolerance that they want to call fascism, it's this. Yeah. It's that you have to think like us. And that's just it.
Yeah, it's a scary moment in America right now, and something has to happen. This is why the upcoming election in November is so important, to put a stop to all of this. Yeah. This has got to stop. In fact, what needs to happen, we need to investigate the January 6th committee.
Oh, that's going to happen.
That's what needs to happen.
Yes.
We need to investigate the investigators, find out what were they doing, who were they talking to get the information that they're getting to go after the people on January 6th.
I'll predict right now there's going to be a bunch of records missing come January when the Republicans take over.
Will it be on January 6th?
Yeah, there you go.
No, it's seriously, people. If you remember in World War II, they said if you got them, smoke them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if you pray.
Yeah.
Seriously, because we need to see this election turn. Mm-hmm. I know you've heard this over and over and over and over. This is the most important election of our lifetime.
Yeah.
And this will be the most important election until the next one. That's how I'm going to say it. Because every election from here on out is going to be consequential.
Yeah. So the night of the election of 1994, I was hanging out with Steve Largent. It was his first run. He got elected, and his campaign manager, Terry Allen, breaks the news to us. Not only did Steve win, but the Republicans, for the first time in over 4 decades, took over the House of Representatives. And Terry said to me, he said, 15,000 pink slips go out tomorrow. That's how many employees of the Democrat-led committee, all those committees, that are going to get fired. Okay? Well, I'm saying, when you see 15, probably 20,000 by now, will lose their jobs, and those will become openings for Republicans, then you're going to see a whole bunch of missing records. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to happen.
May it be so.
Yeah.
May it be so. But if they can retrace phone records of all of these Republicans, we can get the same people, electronics experts.
I hope so.
To go
But can we trust the FBI to do it? Hell no.
No, but surely we have enough smart people, Republicans, to be tech people to be able to go.
Yeah,
that's what they need to be doing now, finding our own tech people that can go in and figure out how to go in and still find these things.
Now, I'd like to find a replacement for my AT&T wireless. They just happen to have the best network here. But they will suck up
I would tell you T-Mobile's better.
Okay.
No, I'm not just saying that. I believe T-Mobile right now has the best network in America.
I'm talking about here in Tulsa.
Here in Tulsa.
Yeah, okay. That's encouraging. So anyway, because AT&T is one of the worst for just handing over all my phone records to the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing about T-Mobile you may not like, it's a German company. Yeah. So if you don't mind buying German, but no, seriously, T-Mobile. I had T-Mobile back in the early 2000s, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
I had 4 phones, and it didn't work in 3 of the places where
I know. I had to leave my T-Mobile on the windowsill.
Yeah, it was horrible. But now they have the largest network of anybody.
Yeah.
Well, what did it? See, they bought Sprint.
Yeah.
So now it's Sprint. In fact, my wife and I were in Montana last year, not this summer, but the summer before, and she had she had an iPhone.
Yeah.
It wasn't. We on the same network. Oh, okay, now I'm doing a Samsung commercial. Anyway, she lost service. I never lost service anywhere. I mean, everywhere I went, I never lost service ever, and she was losing service. My kids had one has Verizon, and the others have AT&T, but I never lost service anywhere. In the woods.
You know, the biggest bulk of my customer base happens to be the rich folk down 101st and Sheridan area, and down there for decades now, the best service is AT&T, because it's hard to get a cell phone tower down there. Because they're like the folks on Martha's Vineyard. Yeah. They don't want good cell service, but they don't want cell towers in their neighborhood.
Right.
They want them in the poor section.
Well, I'm down there a lot. I've never lost service. I've never lost service anywhere in Tulsa.
Yeah, I got to revisit this thing. And this is the thing, folks, and this is just our little tip on mobile. When you're trying to figure out what's the best, what the national maps say might be a little bit important. Most important is where you daily
where do you use it the
travel.
most? Right. The other thing that actually got me back to T-Mobile is if you have a son or relative in the military, see, we don't pay for our service. If you there's a family plan, a military plan where it's $5. Yeah, it's only $5 per
So my social credit score is not as good.
Well,
as yours.
no, but T-Mobile now they have a family plan where, especially if over 65 plan. So you and your wife, it's like $25, unlimited, for anything in the country. I mean, text, data, everything, and it's only $25 a month. So. You have to try it. Check it out.
I know. Remember when Rush
Don't take my word for it. And listen, we don't get paid. I wish. Hey, T-Mobile, if you hear this, please feel free.
Remember when Rush Limbaugh would let the cell phone callers to the front of the line because they're paying by the minute while on hold? Remember those days when we had to be careful about minutes and the god-awful penalties for going over?
It used to be so expensive.
Yeah.
You remember with the bag phones?
Oh, geez.
I had my boss, my first boss here for insurance, he had a bag phone, and he gave it to me. He said, "Oh, you don't have to buy it." He just gave it to me, and I didn't realize why he gave it to me because it was so expensive.
Yeah.
I got off that quick, too. I mean, that bag phone, I should have saved it. It's probably an heirloom. I could probably get money for it, for actually having a bag phone. But that was... I mean, it was costing me like $160 a month for like an hour or something. It was.
Well, those days I couldn't afford.
Had to plug it into your cigarette lighter for power, and then pull it out with that wire. Oh, do you remember? What was that movie? Oh, Boogie. No, not what is the name of that thing? Nights at the Roxbury. It was a comedy. And their mother gave them these cell phones to go out, and they were like the old military walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
These huge things about this long, and they're going out with these gigantic cell phones.
I couldn't afford any of that. I had a pager. There was about 5 years there where everybody had
I remember
pagers.
everybody, and you'd be in a room and you kept hearing this beep, 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 all over the room.
Or the person 2 pews in front of you in church.
and then what was the company that came out with where you could text on them? What was the before the? I forget what you call it. Anyway, I'm sorry. We got to get back to this.
There's some news happening.
We're chasing a rabbit.
Yeah.
Anyway, the tactic of the January 6th committee is now to start. Latest big thing was Newt Gingrich. They're trying to get him. They want him in there, and they're not getting the common people anymore because they realize that too many.
In a development this week, the RNC was actually given a subpoena to appear in the Supreme Court, is challenging the authority of the January 6th committee to issue any subpoenas. Now remember, Steve Bannon was already convicted of contempt for not appearing. And so this is interesting.
Really?
Supreme Court could throw all of this out. Now, they just ruled on this one RNC lawsuit challenging it and appealing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder what authority that this January 6th committee has to issue these subpoenas.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what, particularly because they basically violated all kinds of rules.
House rules, which makes it effectively an ad hoc committee of the Speaker.
Right.
Which has no real authority over America.
Right.
Only has authority in as much as the Speaker has authority.
Right.
And the Speaker cannot subpoena anybody on her own.
Right.
She's not yet the Queen. So.
Right.
Anyway,
good.
That's going to be an interesting thing.
Right.
So.
Hey, did you hear Hillary Clinton? She's claiming Trump rallies are like Hitler's rallies, where he's ranting and raving. I wonder if Hillary saw Brandon's last, I don't know what you call it, whether it was a rally or the speech or his national address.
In front of Independence Hall with the red lights in the background. Yes, the red glow.
With the MAGA rally, or MAGA rant.
The rally from hell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, former First Lady Hillary Clinton compared rallies held by former President Donald Trump to rallies once held by Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler during an event at a Texas Tribune festival. Mm-hmm. I remember as a young student trying to figure out how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler? How did that happen? And I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing up there ranting and raving. Mm-hmm. Man, did she watch Biden? People shouting, raising their arms. What's happening, these people? Why did they believe that? Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows and rows of young men with their arms raised. Yeah, right. Come on, give me a break. President Joe Biden and other Democrats have aggressively attacked Republicans since the August 8th raid on Mar-a-Lago, which liberals celebrated, with Biden claiming Republicans embraced semi-fascism and labeling Trump supporters as a threat to democracy. No, it's a threat against totalitarianism is what it is. And that's what Democrat Tim Ryan, by the way, he's running against J.D. Vance, and I hope J.D. really just annihilates him.
Yeah.
So Trump supporters, as Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio said, it was important to kill and confront an extremist movement among Republicans during appearance on none other than MSDNC.
Yeah.
Clinton has previously criticized Trump supporters, most notably during her unsuccessful, and I repeat, unsuccessful 2016 campaign. To just grossly be generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Mm-hmm. Right? The racist, sexist, and homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up, Clinton said back in 2016.
Yeah.
Some conservatives and media figures criticized Biden's rhetoric in the wake of the hit-and-run death of an 18-year-old named Kayler Ellingston in North Dakota. Authorities charged Shannon Brandt with vehicular homicide and and released him on $50,000 bail, which you heard about that. This Democrat supporter ran over an 18-year-old kid, killed him because he was a MAGA supporter.
Yeah, an extremist.
Yeah, an extremist. And
Hillary said so.
Yeah, and Biden's speech, essentially, he said Biden's speech incited him to do this. So there have been more people killed over Biden in the Democrats' rhetoric than there have over Trump's. Another thing, this is interesting. And do you want to talk about, because I'll talk about Matt Gaetz' response, but the commitment to America.
Yeah. So this happened really. Was it yesterday? Yesterday morning. Kevin McCarthy kind of organized. He's kind of seen as currently the Republican leader in the House. But he's put together a team, and they put together this basic kind of a compact, I forget the way it called. It's kind of like what Newt Gingrich did, or is this
Contract with America is what it was in
2.0.
90s. Was it 96?
94.
94.
Yep. It was the midterm 2 years after Clinton got elected, and then just fell apart. Well, anyway, so, and it's really 4 basic things. Didn't really spell out a specific bill, but just commitments to safety, to strong economy, to, national defense, borders, and some things like that, and individual liberty, So I thought those were, just some great things to go on. And listen, Gingrich said when he put together a Contract with America, they pulled everything. They said everything on that list, and there were, I think, 10 items on Gingrich's list, all polled more than 60% favorable. So you knew they were all good things to run on. So that's what he's got going on. I did talk last summer to Kevin Hern, our congressman. He was tapped to put together a budget proposal to bring us back to a balanced budget by the end of the decade. And Hern got such high marks on it. Trump met with Kevin Hern last summer about it. He went to where Trump was at, New Jersey. He spends his summers there. So anyway, so Hern's going to be playing a role. Jim Jordan definitely is going to be playing a role. In fact, Jim Jordan's coming to Tulsa here in the next couple weeks to a fundraiser for Josh Brakeen, who's running for House District 2, Mullen's former seat. Mullen actually, last night, he gave some very interesting details. After the Trump rally, Newsmax carried it live, and then Carl Higbee was talking to Mark Wayne Mullen. And Mullen said, he said, Jim Jordan and I were the last 2 visitors Trump received at the White House at the end of his term. And he said, we were talking at that point. He says, I think, if I remember right, Jim Jordan had asked, are you going to run again? And Trump at that point says, why? I've won twice. He really believed it. And so Mullen said this last night. He said, I think the Democrats have pushed him into running. He said, they are so scared. And he was never going to publicly shut the door on the idea. But Mullen got the sense, talking to him privately, that he wasn't inclined to seek re-election. But it's just been growing. And the more he's done the rallies, he's gauged, does he have the support based on rallies? And they aren't giving up.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I think the thing that made him run the first time, 2016, was that event. It was at the White House press corps thing where Obama got up.
Yes, he was there as a guest.
And Obama basically humiliating in front of the whole White House, and everybody was laughing essentially. And he says, "At least I have been president of the United States."
Right.
I think that was the thing right there that said, "Oh,
yeah."
okay.
And he said, "You will never be president."
Yeah, you will never be president.
Yeah.
And there was "Oh, really?" Yeah, I think that's how he operates. You do not tell Donald Trump, what he will not do
or cannot do.
Or cannot do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
and let that, for young people out there, let that be a lesson to you. Do not accept other people's determination of what you can or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
That really is. Let that be a motivator to you to prove them wrong.
In fact, I want to say this. I was having this conversation with my oldest son. We homeschooled all our kids all the way through. And all of our kids, you know, just like anything, you always feel like you didn't get what everybody else got. And so it leaves you wondering, did you get everything you should have got? And I finally said to him, I said, you know, Jonathan, I went to public school all the way through. And every day I was told what I cannot do. And I said, I wanted to focus on what you can do. And I wanted them to love learning. And my kids still learn to this day. They love learning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hey, getting back to the commitment to America.
Yeah.
Not everybody is happy about it. And not even as Republican.
You said Matt Gaetz had something.
Matt Gaetz, yeah. It says, I think the headline is a little misleading. The headline here, this is from Daily Caller, says Matt Gaetz rips McCarthy's commitment to America's agenda. And Republican Florida Rep Matt Gaetz slammed House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's commitment to America agenda in an exclusive interview with Daily Caller. It was exclusive. But basically, he doesn't disagree with the commitment to America. He has issue with one of the points, and it apparently is the bullet point number 3 in the agenda. It says that focus one bullet point, and this bullet point deals with the hiring of 200,000 new police officers through recruitment bonuses.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he says, you see, like the third bullet point in whatever this suggests, that the federal government needs to fund incentives for 200,000 new law enforcement. I don't believe the federal government needs to be excessively entangled in state and local law enforcement. It is not practical. He also suggested McCarthy may have gotten the idea from ex-GOP pollster and communications consultant Frank Luntz. I think the two of them actually roomed together.
They did.
Yeah. And noting, and it says right here, they rented a room in D.C. from Luntz.
Yeah.
And called him his roommate.
Yeah.
Oh, I think he just rents from him. And
He did, yes. That's essentially it.
Yeah. He said, it is unsound constitutionally and it's disappointing to see something that doesn't align with traditional Republican principles on federalism emerging out of some, poll-tested focus groups from the roommate of the minority leader. Yeah. I have to agree. See, the problem with the police is not the money you're paying them. Okay. I don't think they need to be paid bonuses. Okay. I think they're paid enough. Well, let me rephrase that. I think if you create an environment for them to do their job properly, then they're being paid enough. Now, there are some cities, Chicago, Seattle, Portland, D.C., you know which cities I'm talking about, the Democrat-run cities, where they're maybe not being paid enough for the crap they have to put up with, okay? That's where you got to pay the bonuses. But the problem is there's not enough bonus to be able to make people work in those situations where you'd rather go fight in Iraq or Iran, Afghanistan, than you would be a police officer, because you're more likely to get killed in one of our own cities than you are in a foreign country.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just say this generally. When you're offering to pay more money for doing the same job than some other employer, it's probably because you have bad working conditions, and rather than fix those, take example, Tulsa public school teachers are paid a couple grand more a year than Broken Arrow or Jinx or Bixby or Wasso. Why did the folks out in the suburbs have a less of a problem filling their spots?
Right.
Because the problem isn't the pay. The problem is the conditions.
You don't want to work there.
Yes.
You don't want to work in Tulsa.
That's exactly it.
It's because you got a superintendent that doesn't know what she's doing. Right. And you got principals and things that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and
they don't support you. You don't get any support.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago we had a school board member, Tulsa Public Schools here. She's talking about the ridiculousness having to do with all this gender policy stuff and pronouns, and she's like, you can't teach in that environment.
No, they're focused on not teaching the basics, okay? And then you wonder why our kids can't get into your major universities. And then the problem is, if they do get in, it's a continuation of the same crap they're getting at the schools here. They're focused on gender identity, then your equity, something in inclusion, equity. What is
diversity,
it?
Equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, diversity, DEI,
yeah.
And it's and you wonder then why the Chinese are taking over the world.
Yeah.
You know, the Chinese are leading us in technology. They're leading us in pharmaceuticals. They're leading us in the military. They're leading us in everything, and we're worried about gender identity and racial and sexual equality and this and that and transgender and blah 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 blah, and it's just silly. And what difference is it going to make if a woman is a general and head of the army or a senator or a president or whatever, when we don't have a president, when you got Chairman Xi or somebody ruling us, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're serving the Chinese and you think they're going to have a role then, or Ayatollah nukes us or whatever. No, come on. This stuff has to stop. And you got Brandon selling wolf tickets to Russia over Ukraine and sending them all of our money while we're being drained of our own resources. We're not using our own oil. We're giving all our money to Iran, to Venezuela, and all these other countries. In the meantime, we're just literally begging China to take over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. It's unbelievable. And you've got people out there still worried about, I don't like the way Donald Trump talks.
Yeah.
He's just not a nice person.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, people. I'm sorry. I have to keep coming back to that. You need to wake up.
Yeah. I want to get into that issue with you. Before we finish this up, Daily Caller had this article, and I'm reading here.
It's the same one I just...
Right. One of Daily Caller's newest journalists to their lineup lives right here in Tulsa. She's a friend of mine, Mary Rook. I've talked to her about coming on the show. We probably ought to have her on here. I think she'd give a perspective. She follows more than nationals.
Is that a picture of her?
No. That's ad.
She's got some bodybuilder, got some female bodybuilder.
With fashion boots. I got to say, now here's a funny thing, Eddie. That says something about me. So, Sooner Politics, I went to Google AdWords or AdSense. They basically pay me to get to place ads in, but it's based on the viewers reading in websites they go to. And so a guy says to me one time, he says, yeah, I like your site. He says, those are some god-awful ads, though. Why do you put those ads out there? And I'm like, you just hold on yourself. So anyway, but yeah, I have to see about getting Mary Rook in. You know, she's a mother of I think 3 kids. I don't know if Saturday mornings will work, but we'll have to find a time to get her in here because she's just sharp as can be and a great journalist.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Yeah.
I'd love it. That would be great.
But anyway, so yeah, there's that. I agree with you to this. You know, have you heard Trump constantly going after that? He wants the death penalty for drug distributors. You know, I have a problem with that.
Well, see. Here's the problem. We talk. Was it Nancy Reagan that started the war on drugs? That slogan,
The Just Say No,
just say no,
campaign,
and we started the war. And to me, I always like to say, and I think it was back in 2014 or something. They said we've basically given up on the war on drugs, and my response to that was, we gave up on the war on drugs right after it got started. We never truly fought the war on drugs. We never really took it seriously. If you want to fight the war on drugs, you do what Singapore did on the war on drugs, and they had the capital punishment law. Turkey didn't do capital punishment. In extreme cases, they just did life in prison. So Turkish
prison is no resort.
No, exactly. I mean, you might as well take capital punishment, right? But until it brings me back to the thing, the deterrent to abortion. You will not deter abortion until you punish the aborter.
Yeah.
Okay. The mom.
Yeah.
Right. The lady that goes and gets the abortion.
Yeah. Hires the hitman.
Yeah, that orders the hit. Yeah, right. Yeah. That orders the hit. Yeah,
yeah.
And because you can try to get the doctor, they'll find somebody else to do it. So, everybody wants. Oh, you can't blame her because why? Mm-hmm. I mean, ultimately, it's her decision.
It's all politics.
It's like the devil made me do it. It's like always blaming the sin. You can blame whoever you want, but ultimately, you're the one who did it. Mm-hmm. You're the one who killed that baby, and so. I've argued this with many people I respect and like, but I'm sorry, until you actually punish the aborter, you will not stop abortion. Now, let me say this: there are degrees of punishment. Marijuana is a certain and this, but there are certain fentanyl. When you got a drug that has killed, 90 million people? Or it couldn't be that many because we don't have that many people in America, but say 90,000. I think it's 90,000. I know it's 90-something. So it's probably 90,000 Americans in a year accidentally. That's a dangerous thing. And it's kids, and they've got it disguised as candy. Mm-hmm. And things like this, and it's coming in from a foreign country, and until you actually make the punishment fit the crime, if the crime is killing 90,000 people, then I think you deserve to die.
Yeah, and here's where you're getting to my real complaints about it, is to have a one-size-fits-all, such as right now, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, just like heroin, just like fentanyl. So the government's treating the two the same. Now, keep in mind, the federal government only has authority to enforce laws when it involves interstate commerce, okay? So that would be the limitations of it. The rest is states' rights. It's dealt with the state court. So in anything beyond that, in fact, there's things right now the federal government has on the books that even Ted Cruz said, and Rand Paul said, they don't have authority to ban marijuana in a particular state. They can ban the interstate commerce of it. But in Oklahoma, 5 years ago, if a mother had a bottle of CBD oil with no THC, she still faced 5 years in prison.
Well, you remember Rebecca Spotted Crow.
Yes.
Got, 11 years for an ounce or less than an ounce.
So
it's ridiculous.
Here's where I'm going with Donald Trump, that this seems a little bit inconsistent. You remember when Kim Kardashian and Kanye West convinced him to do a bunch of pardons, included a mom that only been convicted once. Mm-hmm. But she was in money problems, and somebody sold her on an idea, and the scheme went south. She got left holding the bag and had 25 years left, and he pardoned her or commuted her sentence. Right. And I'm like, okay, Trump, you're going to have to flesh this out a little bit better than just say, if anybody's distributing drugs, it's automatically death penalty. I just don't. There's a number of us concerned.
I think she wasn't distributing. See, what I think Donald. See, it's more of a personal. In other words, if you're a dealer, See, she was a mule. I think what he was looking at is the difference between a mule and the actual distributor of the drugs.
Yeah.
And so, to me, if somebody gets duped into, like, did you see that movie with what's his name, Clint Eastwood, where he was an old man and he was just driving drugs in a car, and he was.
I kind of recall that.
Yeah, it's a couple of years old. But anyway, you got some old guy, and he's driving these drugs. And but anyway, you've got these people that drive them around or whatever. To me, that's a different situation than the person behind the whole deal that would hire somebody, or the person that's actually one-on-one finding young people to do this. So I understand your point. And I think this is the problem, too, I think, with our judicial system. In fact, let's talk about this in a broader perspective, and that is our judicial system and judges, judging judges. I think one of the big problems we have today is finding just judges.
Yes.
It just deals with finding honorable, trustworthy people who want to follow and execute justice in the law. So with me, there are two things that I think to be a just judge you have to have.
Okay.
That is a penchant for justice and an understanding of what true compassion is.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to have room for compassion.
Yeah.
And understanding. So if I'm a judge, I know what the law is, but I also understand there are different circumstances. See, what I used to like, what they used to do in today's world, you can throw that out the window, was you could, even when you had, especially with young people, son, you can go to jail for 5 years, or you can join the Marines. Remember? They used to, and that straightened them out. Yeah. Guys will, in fact, several of them ended up becoming great individuals after their meal because the discipline came in. If you mess up in the Marines or the military or do whatever, you're going back to jail.
Yeah. You remember the Sarajevo Olympics '84? There's a great downhill skier from the United States, Phil Johnson. You know how Phil Johnson learned to ski?
In
He
jail,
got in trouble and was in a juvie program in California that had a diversion thing, and it involved an opportunity to get to go skiing once in a while. He learned how to downhill ski, and he was the most gutsy daredevil guy that he would take risks that nobody else liked. And I remember when Franz Klammer called him a nose picker from the back, and he beat everybody. But here's the thing. He became an Olympic legend because of a juvie, alternative program.
Yeah.
That straightened him out and gave him purpose.
Yeah, there were many military people in World War II, Korea, and so forth that ended up serving our nation and becoming heroes even. Yeah. That the only reason they ended up there is because it was that or jail.
Yeah.
Prison.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But getting back to the original story, Dave, I mean, what I'm trying to say is somewhere between Donald Trump and a capital punishment for drugs, I think there are certain drugs that are worthy of capital punishment and harsh punishment. But the way it's going now, don't do it again.
Yeah.
It's not working.
Right. And here's where I last wanted to cite. I had a chance to talk with Ed Meese a few years ago, who was Reagan's chief of staff and was very much involved in the war on drugs from a prosecution standpoint. And Ed had actually developed the principle using very old law, in even British law of the high seas, to allow commandeering their booty, their loot. He said, these kingpins lived in another continent, and we could never get at them. But all their money was going through our banking system. So we started seizing their assets. He said that turned into that policy, which was directed at those offshore drug kingpins, has turned into our own cops becoming pirates on the highway
Yeah.
through asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
My point is this. It tends to become more corrupt over time, not less.
It does.
And so whatever Trump's trying to do, we just have to be careful that it stays true to the intention.
Oh, I agree. And that's why I say it gets back to that story I'm talking about. You have to have trust judges and prosecutors.
Yeah.
Because it'll get back to, the people with money get off and the people that don't get executed. I mean, it's a serious thing, and that's so, but hey, getting back to the thing of the asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
We've got cases. Pat and I got into this, and we called in. We argued. We had the DA. We had
Kunzweiler's the worst.
Yeah, and we had a guy from the representing the police, and man, we got into it on there because
it's a cash cow.
Oh, it was ridiculous
because it's money for their department that they don't have to have appropriated by their city or county or state government. And it's what they use for bonuses and for new toys and whistles and everything. And it's a real problem. Kyle Lovelace worked on this. And
I remember.
We
wanted Kyle
in.
We had Kyle in.
Yeah, Kyle and I became really good friends over this and a few other things. But he said he just wanted to take away the personal cash incentive by saying, no, it comes into the state treasury to be appropriated.
Well, I don't even think, to me, it wasn't even that. To me, it should be held in a fund, and the state should have to prove that they have a right to keep it.
Right.
That's where the big problem was.
Rather than us proving they don't have a right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Kyle wanted to do this in increments, and he couldn't even get to step one. And then they investigated him and found him in technically a violation, some things. And he had to avoid prison. And he's a single dad with 2 little girls to raise. And he had to pay all of this money and pledge he'll never run for public office again. They got what they wanted. That was David Prater, the DA over there.
Yeah. Remember there was a pastor here that from Bixby or Glenpool?
Muskogee.
Oh, Muskogee.
There was a concert, a band had $50,000 they're raising for an orphanage, and it got seized in Muskogee.
Yeah, and they took his money just because he had cash in his trunk.
Yeah, and what's his name? Glenn Beck got on that.
Did they ever pay it back?
Yeah.
They did. Well, good. But I have a friend. He's from Bangladesh, and he was going home. He was an idiot. And so he's carrying $40,000 in cash in a suitcase to take to Bangladesh because he's buying some land. Mm-hmm. And so they took it from him, leaving the country. And so he didn't have any ill intent or anything, but he was literally going to. And so they held it for all this time. And so when he finally, the advice he got from his lawyer was basically agree to give him half.
Yeah.
And that was the deal. They never prosecuted, they never brought in charges, never did anything. They said, yeah, sure, thank you, boom, and gave him his half back. And that's the kind of stuff that is going on all the time. They don't have to prove anything. They don't have to do it. They know they've got you by the short hairs, as they call it.
You have rights, but your property doesn't have rights. Right. And that's their argument. So Kunzweiler, is on the opposite side on things on this. There's a lot of things I like about Steve, but a lot of things I'm really not happy with. And Vic Regalado is another one. Anybody who's in that administrative role where they see it as now becoming integral to balancing their budgets, And so when I'm talking to Ed Meese, he just there was probably 50, 60 of us, and Randy Crable was there with me, and he said, I condemn it. He said,
it gets back to the old scripture, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
It corrupts.
And that's why Kyle Lovelace, he sensed that their only real motivation was that they get to keep that money.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
And he says, if I take away that, you'll probably get rid of all the abuses.
You would. Yeah. It is, and that's what corrupts the Border Patrol. That money, it's just, and what happens once you go down that road, it's almost impossible to come out because now they've got you, because then it's the blackmail.
Yeah,
it's the blackmail or it's death. I mean,
I ended up putting 3 pictures. Kunzweiler's one of them, a sheriff of Canadian County Edwards, and I think it was the DA, the Attorney General. And it's a poster from Pirates of the Caribbean, except I put their face superimposed over Jack Sparrow and them. I call it the Pirates of Route 66, because this is piracy. When they pull you over and they take your cash under some, I think you're involved in drugs.
Yeah, I think you're involved in drugs.
Yeah.
Just because you have money.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because you have money. Yeah. It's driving while rich.
Yeah.
It said DWB, DWR.
Yes.
Driving while rich or driving while having cash. Hey, I'm going to finish with this.
I do have one other thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with that. And then,
okay. Supreme Court ruled this week that the marijuana state question will not be on the ballot this year. Yeah. And now I talked with Chip Paul, the author of 788. Now he had his own petition that he's getting ready to circulate this coming up after the holidays. But I said, no, what about this one? He pointed out to me that this one that was fully funded, had all kinds of money, was going to make the ballot. And the person running is Michelle Tilley, according to the records I have here. Michelle Tilley's been a Democrat operative and campaign, manager and consultant for a long time now. And I told some of the leaders of the medical marijuana thing and some of their attorneys, I said, I don't think they care whether it passes. I think they care whether it gets Democrat voters out. And so this is the thing that Chip Paul and I reminded Chip about it. I said, I think this was all just a way to get the Democrat turnout. Much like 20 years ago, when, shock of all shocks, Steve Largent did not become governor, but Brad Henry did. What happened was they put a cockfighting ban on the ballot, knowing that where does cockfighting happen in Oklahoma? It still happens. It happens in Indian country, Little Dixie, the whole eastern side. And those are tribals, territories in that. The tribes put a lot of money into Brad Henry because they wanted full-blown casino gambling, and they got it. It was effective, and it all has to do with who gets their people to the polls. And so I don't know what happened. I'm saying the Secretary of State's office took their time counting the signatures, and they took an awful long time counting the signatures.
And it's not on the ballot. So
it's not on the ballot. And so the Supreme Court said, you know what? That's how long it took. That's how long it took.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. That's funny. That's
okay, good. So I'm being honest with you. It looks like manipulating things. So I think what I'm predicting now, in 2 years from now, during the primary in June, you will see a marijuana question on the ballot.
Like, gives us 2 years, or gives me 2 years to fight against it.
And Chip Paul would like to come in and talk to you about it.
Okay.
Actually, he's got 2 measures.
But I think he's not for the opening it up.
He's got 2 measures. One is he wrote 788 that became law.
Right.
And he'll tell you right now, there's a bunch of things he wished he could do over again. And so he wants to redo it to try to fix a number of things. All right. Like take it out of the health department, and some other things. So anyway, he's saying, hey, I'll come in. Okay.
All right.
So.
All right. Hey, I'm gonna finish with this, and for those of you that don't watch daytime television, especially if you don't watch The View, but you probably heard the name Sunny Hostin. Sunny Hostin is one of the black audience hosts. It's funny name. Hostesses or hosts of The View. And Sunny decided to stick her big foot in her big mouth again, and she claims Hispanics who vote for Republicans are going against their own self-interests, which is ridiculous. What does she know? It's so funny because if a Hispanic person were to get up and say something about black people voting against their own self-interest, she would be the first one to say they need to stay out of their black business, and all that. So, you talk about hypocrisy. This is the ultimate in hypocrisy. Anyway, The View co-host Sonny Huston said Friday Hispanics who vote Republican are going against their own self-interest when they were discussing White House senior advisor Jared Kushner, who is married to Ivanka, his remarks during an interview. And he condemned the alleged treatment of migrants as political pawns. And so Sonny decided to say they're voting against their own self-interest if they're voting Republican. But Ana Navarro, who used to be a Republican, she's I don't think she ever was really. She's a real rhino, if she's even still a Republican. I don't even know if she's really still a Republican. But anyway, she criticized Florida Republican Governor DeSantis for arranging for 50 migrants to voluntarily board a flight to Martha's Vineyard. And then she says, I'm a Floridian, as is Jared now, unfortunately, as Jared is, unfortunately. So that's my taxpayer money that's being used as a political stunt to schlep migrants who are fleeing a communist regime like I did in Nicaragua many years ago. Okay, all right. Now, Ana Navarro, as I said, she's not only a former Republican and rhino, she's also an idiot, okay?
Mm. That's required to be on The View.
Well, I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's also eating too many enchiladas, but that's another whole story. But anyway, but that's a stupid statement, okay, where she says he's using taxpayer money. Florida, by the way, let me just say this. Florida, by the way, has no state tax. It's one of the few states in the United States that has no state tax. Now, if he's using federal tax money, then good on him, okay? Because Biden is using the same money to transport migrants all over the country and house them all over the country. So it's an idiotic statement to say that DeSantis is using taxpayer money, because all the money that's being spent on any migrant that's coming across the border is being used on these migrants. I mean, come on, how stupid of a statement is that? It shows that this lady really knows nothing about a subject that she is supposed to know about. She used to be on CNN, by the way, before she got on The View, and I don't even know why they have her on there.
I got something else on Sonny.
All right. Well, hold on. Let me finish one thing at a time.
Yeah.
One thing. We don't want to overtax our audience here, okay? Anyway, anyway, she said that's her, and it's funny. That's my taxpayer money. Oh my goodness! Look, all of these people. How do people even watch this show? I don't get it. And she talks about she fled Nicaragua and communist regime, and Republicans talk against communism and socialism every day, yet they have no conscience or qualms against using victims of communism and socialism as political pawns. This is inhuman. It's unconscionable. It is heartless. It is cruel. I will tell you what it is not. It is not Christian. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Well, that's what's so interesting to me, that there are so many Latinos that vote Republican because they vote against their own interests. Holston said, if you really are interested in these types of results, then you're a Democrat, Holston replied. I mean, Sonny's probably the same as, if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black.
So get this.
Dave, can you... You just can't wait.
I'm
you
sorry.
Can't wait. You can't just simmer down.
You're right.
Do this. Serenity now.
Yes.
Let me at least let me finish.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Let me finish with my thoughts on The View.
Yes.
These ladies are idiots.
Yes.
That's all I want to say. They're idiots.
Yeah.
Anybody that listens to and takes in what these ladies on The View have to say, you're more of an idiot than they are. Okay, that's the end. All right, David, it's yours.
Sunny Hostin also stepped in it this week when she criticized Nikki Haley, whose middle name is Nikki, okay, for not using her first name, which has a more Indian subcontinent ring to it, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? Sunny Hostin's name is not Sunny.
Yeah.
It's just a nickname she goes by. It's Ascension Cummins Hostin.
Yeah.
And yet she calls herself Sunny and criticizes Nikki for not using her first name.
Yeah, her fellow hosts got on her for not using her.
I think at least they saw the hypocrisy.
Yeah, they got
She couldn't even see her own hypocrisy.
Yeah, she got embarrassed. They embarrassed her in front of her own audience on the show because they start, well, wait a minute, what is your name? And then, well, it's, you could tell she was embarrassed because she realized she stepped in it right there on the show.
Well, I think she just assumed they would cover for her because that's what the left does.
Yeah. But,
You go to a White House press conference and it's nothing like it was 4 years ago.
But she forgot one thing. She's on a show with a bunch of liberal females. That's the mistake. See, you have a bunch of conservative guys. They'll sit there quietly and they'll deal with it later. Say, like you and I, when we get off the air here, I'm going to tell you all the mistakes you made.
You'll tell me where I was wrong and everything. Right.
And you'll tell me. But no, if we were a couple of liberal females sitting here, we were conservative women, I give more credit, would probably wait and do offer one another the same courtesy. But you're not going to sit there and say, Dave, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I'm just saying, let's go back to the Obama years. Occasionally there at the end, Major Garrett would actually challenge Obama at a press briefing. But it was just him, right? And then Trump comes in, and my God, it's an attack mob, right? And then you come, all of a sudden, now there's Peter Ducey's the only one who's really challenging. The rest of them, they've just self-castrated.
Well,
they got no guts, no balls.
Well, they never did. The ones they have up front. Now, there's an African guy in the back. I don't know if you ever seen it, but and they won't call on him anymore. They have him on if they even still let him in the room. He gives them fits too. But there's several. There's a pecking order in Fox. They let him, and I think one of the reasons that Steve is allowed up there is because of the fact that he plays ball. The network has agreed. Yeah. See, I think that's one of the reasons too that Fox has agreed to play ball with them.
Yeah.
But see, it's almost better if they didn't, and it would become obvious that the whole news media, the White House press corps, is totally biased if they don't let any of them, like you don't see OAN up there, you don't see Newsmax. Now, James Rosen occasionally you'll see him. He's a little further back.
And Emerald Robinson before James.
Before, right, right.
But
so
she got in a few, but
you
can always see she's way in the back row.
But she's not with Newsmax
No,
anymore.
they fired her.
They fired her because she basically let her conservative self out.
Yeah, it had to do with vaccines.
Yeah.
And Newsmax, they could easily go the way of Fox.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, easily.
Because they're trying to kiss.
They want to play the game. Yeah. Kiss the ring. Yeah, kiss the ring. So, hey, listen, I think we're going to call it for a day.
It was good.
Hey, thank you all so much for putting up with us for another week. And we look forward to doing more of this a week from now.
Yeah.
Lord willing, and the creek don't dry.
Only 6-7 weeks till election.
Can't get here soon enough.
Yep.
Hey, seriously, though, if you're a Republican, do two things. Call all of your friends, call your family, get them to vote. Straight ticket. Listen, as I've said, if there are issues in the party, let's take care of those within the party after. Okay? But right now, it's important we take back the Senate, we take back the House. And we'll worry about the White House later. But right now, we need the Senate and the House back so we can prevent any further damage from being done in our nation as it is being done, okay? So we've got to take those back, keep our state intact from going down the tubes, and then we'll start seeing some changes, okay? But please pray. Get everybody you know to vote Republican this November.
Yeah.
Couple of weeks. Well, a little over a month. But it's very, 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 very important. And Dave and I want to do our part. We ask you to do your part and keep praying and praising. Remember, praise, to me, praise is one of the most important weapons, spiritual weapons we have. Psalm 149, 150. Okay? Hey, God bless everybody. Have a great week, and we will see you and speak to you a week from now. Bye.